because the last time that we talked about this was a really, really important point that I'd been kind of mulling around and it's come up. White people are not doing well. American white people are not doing good. And I don't think anybody's checking in on them. They keep getting pulled into the same fights everybody else is getting pulled into, right? The political stage, anything from the online stratosphere that influences them. And they're like, well, since everybody's got an opinion on it, I can have an opinion on it. And they haven't done the work. They don't think they need to do the work because they think the fact that they just have access means that they also have autonomy. And it's like,
So then, like,
no.
under that framework, like, what does checking in with white people look like?
Honestly, it's calling them, it's texting them, it's having conversations with them. It's the same thing you do with your grandma. Like your grandma, you haven't heard from her in a couple of weeks and you have weekly talks anyway, but then all of a sudden she dips out. You give her a call and you're like, everything going okay? How are you doing? And this is part of why I think it's fascinating seeing the digital landscape reshape racial culture. Because if you go to Facebook, many older folks will use Facebook because the speed is pretty slow and they can see how everybody's posting and putting things up. But man, you try to convince them to get on Twitter and they're just like, oh, like, blasted back like, some sort of stuntman in a Tom Cruise movie. And they can't hang. They're not prepared. One of the things that I had brought up before was how fundamentally important it is to have fun. And the thing that I find to be really funny is that this functionality of having fun is specifically the thing that has allowed Black people to survive white people subjugating them in America. And it is the thing that will let any race or culture survive subjugation by any other entity for any humans in history going forward. That is quite literally how every historical case of long-term mass slave holdings have been seen to have turned out. The slaves who held on to fun, the ones who held on to their own culture, were able to survive better than the ones who were constantly mixed up. And there's basically, this historical
Thanks, Bruce.
documentation.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for checking in with me. I appreciate it. Keep going. Sorry, keep going.
No worries. Uh, you know, that's one of those things that people have now collated the data. But when the slave owners of the slave trade that brought Black people to America realized that if they could communicate the same language, then that would spell trouble because they might launch a revolt. And so therefore you better mix that group up as much as possible or keep them uneducated as much as possible. It's a shattering moment. It's a shattering moment to shatter that culture by making it so that people cannot communicate. And so I use that specific instance to create a reverse definition, a shadow cast in order to create the outline of my definition of what culture is. It is communication. How is it that we are communicating by race in the modern age? And what I'm finding is that white men suck at it. They fucking suck at it. These guys have no fucking clue what they're doing, and they're not bringing their A game. And I wanted to talk about that, which is part of the reason I asked you to let me come back on here, because I also noticed that it happens to Black men in America. It happens to Israelis, Palestinians. It happens to the British. Everyone is beholden to this. You want to look at Japanese people, Koreans, anybody from Australia, and the fundamental nature of having fun, like on a chemistry level, it gives you the dopamine so that when you're handling really big ideas, your brain doesn't pop. So having fun is a crucial part of culture, is a crucial part of your identity. But we are seeing with the formation of something that, many of you might know about, just called Black Twitter, isn't an app. It's not an entity. There's no edges to it, right? Like Black Twitter doesn't have a firm boundary. It's just anybody who wants to jump in and be a part of that, who wants to add to it, can. But if you're going to be a part of the culture, it means that you have to be there for other people, both in supporting them, listening to them, and being a part of the conversation without having your head all the way up your ass. So at what point then does a person like me transition over into being a part of Black culture? If I don't have a culture that I consider that I come from, whether or not that's my language, whether or not that's playing video games, or whether or not, like, if I had grown up having like guns and stuff like that, and that being something that I formed with my identity, how does that translate over? And what I've come to find is that the idea that we are talking about the ability in this lifetime to truly change the game, it is specifically in moments like this between you and I. You and I communicate, and we literally prove that to any white racists, any Black racists, they're fucking wrong. If you and I can get along, it means that all their shit about how we need to stay segregated is just bullshit. Completely can be pushed aside. Doesn't have any impact on it. But the question then becomes, why is it that Black culture is making more culture, is enjoying the presence of living, when white culture just seems to be living to die? And I have tried to peel that apart as much as possible. And the answer always comes back to Puritanism. The original people who sailed from England over to America, the Pilgrims, were a bunch of Puritans. Are you familiar with the history of Pilgrims? I mean, we know they gave us Thanksgiving.
Yeah. But let's before you go into a full history.
Well, hang on.
Okay.
Just, I want to bring up just this one point about it, because you can go look up what it is they all did. The internet exists. You can just ask Google. But a lot of people don't know they got thrown out of Britain. They were actually asked to leave. Were you aware of that?
I do think I learned that at one point in time, but it wasn't as impactful on me as it seems to be for you. So why don't you explain that impact for you?
So, I had mentioned last time that I was on here that I consider myself to have been enslaved by my parents in order to be their pet and to provide entertainment for them. I'm hyper autistic, I'm hyper intelligent, and me solving problems in the way that I did, and the fact that I would just love the shit out of them because I couldn't help myself because I was an indoctrinated little white Christian boy. It popped my brain when I found out that the Pilgrims, who so many white Christians idolize as the diplomats, were actually thrown out of Britain because they wouldn't stop fucking with everyone else about how all those people were going to hell for enjoying their lives. And that's
Those
fundamentally
people are
important.
not the fun people at the party.
They're not at the party.
Yeah. Well, no, they come. No, see, that's the worst part is they come and they crash the party, but just to
Oh,
like tell you that you're going to hell, you know?
that's in time. Yeah, in time. But this goes to the point that we have now, because culture in the digital age is, how are we having fun together? And so what American culture has become is not Black culture, is not white culture, is not anybody's culture. It is, take what you want and use it from all the resources that you have available. And the idea about whether or not we're forming new culture, there is no doubt of that in my mind. But I find that the people who would define quote unquote white culture in America take no chances. They don't celebrate, they don't have victory parties, they don't hardly do anything. The most that they do is literally replicating all the national holidays and birthdays. And that's about all the celebration they do throughout the year. I cannot I cannot begin to list the number of people that I know who I've talked to since I've moved to California, and they're like, just I don't know what it is. Like this, things feel like they're sliding downhill. Like the life's just not as exciting. I'm like, yeah, because we used to be in college and we used to go party together. Well, like one last really hard test, and then decided that you were going to go just get absolutely destroyed for the weekend in election in order to take the edge off. When was the last time that you decided that you were going to throw a house party? When was the last time that you decided you were going to throw a block party? When was the last time you decided that you were going to lift other people up with your efforts? And so this is the funny thing that I find about Black culture in the digital landscape now versus white culture in the digital landscape right now, is that people are always mocking rap. White people are always mocking rap. They're always mocking the dress. They're always mocking the hairstyles. They're always mocking, you know, all sorts of different things that they don't understand, when every last inch of it is just to have fun, to be alive and be thrilled by your existence in this giant, colossal mess. And for the most part, there are things that bleed into each other. Like right now, we're seeing a whole bunch of things coming out that are the equivalent of like your Harvey Weinstein stuff about famous rap artists, as the 50th anniversary for hip hop is coming up. You know, if you go back and you listen to the Public Enemy records, like there's lyrics in there that you're like, oh, these are bad guys. These are not cool guys. These guys are not, like, they would have been canceled back then. But the idea was that they did music that made other people think, and that even in a culture that was stagnating because of the oppressive nature of the white man's influence at that time, the Reagan era, hip hop was you know what? I actually have no idea what the fuck is going on, and I'm doing the best that I can to fucking survive by any means necessary. So what I think is fun is literally the Wild West of fun. Anything goes, try it, and if it just isn't working out, it's eventually going to get dropped. And part of the reason for that constant replication of new things within that culture, within Black culture compared to white culture, is specifically because of the ongoing subjugation of that culture by white people in America because of this Puritan influence. The Puritans refused to have fun, and yet they wanted a seat at the table over all fun things anyway. They were not artists, they were not artisans. And if you look at the historical documentation of like the ship logs and stuff, they stopped because the one fun thing they did allow themselves, beer, ran the fuck out, and they had to stop in order to get some more. Like, these are not people to be trusted with the future of a culture. And we can see that now in the digital age, because as more people coalesce into each other, that becomes a more and more flexible substance. White culture doesn't exist. Black culture is just exploding. And we have this dilemma where if no one's checking in on the white people to let them know that they have the agency to literally make art when they're suffering, they think that the only way they'll be able to do it is if they take it from other people when they think it's okay, and if they can get away with it without getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar.